Hi, welcome to the kitchen. We're surrounded by root vegetables and a lot of potato chips.
Oh my gosh.
It is time, my friends. The bowl that is extra large is coming your way.
Wait, what? Oh, the big one.
Yeah.
It's the one where they toss and then they run across the little lines.
They hurl the pigskin, as it were.
And then then sometimes they kick the pigskin.
And then you pay attention when the commercials turn on.
And then they get brain injuries.
It's not a great situation, but you know what it is great for? Consuming loud snack foods.
That's true, because people are yelling and you can be eating a lot of potato chips, but you want to be eating the crunchiest one because, you know, you have to drown out the sounds of everything around you.
Yeah, everyone's cheering and yelling, and there's sports ball, and there's commercials, and sometimes you just want to hear your own crunch. So why not design the crunchiest chip humanly possible to annoy everyone around you?
Yeah, I think that's basically what this is about.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that has some real bite. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a big football game that's coming up, one that people tend to get a little excited for, one that I can't name for legal reasons. However, as I think we all know, the real fun of watching any sort of sports ball is having an excuse to consume half your body weight in snack food, like just a big old bowl of snacks. I suppose you could call it a Super Bowl full of snacks, which then begs the question, what do you fill that Super Bowl of snacks with? I mean, sure, you could go with the safe and standard chips and salsa route, the southern option of pork rinds, or the neglected child of the food world, pretzel sticks, or you could go ham on that Super Bowl by creating the single loudest chip ever concocted inside of a kitchen. A chip that is like biting into a firework. Bam! Right there. A chip that is so loud that it makes your neighbors cover their ears. Because let's be honest, nothing is more fun than getting together with your friends to watch something on the big screen only to then proceed to annoy them with the sounds of your obnoxious crunching. This episode is with apologies to anyone with misophonia. That's right, theorists. Today we're looking at what it takes to fry up the crunchiest chip for all your snacking needs. This episode was actually suggested back during our generic food episode by one of you guys down in the comments, Durjoy Das, who suggested that we research, test, and then create the chip with the loudest possible crunch. What would it be made of? Potato? Corn? Something else? What cooking method would we need to use? Baked? Kettle cooked? Deep fried? How loud could we possibly get a single chip to crunch? So that, my friends, is exactly what we're doing in the kitchen today. We'll start off by munching on a bunch of brand name chips from the store to measure their crunch, and hopefully we'll see what patterns emerge from the data. From there, we'll be able to take that information and apply it to our own rounds of experiments to try and develop one singular perfect chip. One chip to rule them all. So how loud is too loud, my friends? We'll just have to wait and see what breaks first, my eardrums or my stomach. Say goodbye to all those New Year's resolutions about eating healthier, Matt. First things first, why are people even drawn to crunchy foods? Like, what's the appeal? It's actually an interesting question that science hasn't really looked into all that much. My personal hypothesis is that it involves another sense in the eating process. When you think about it, food activates 4 out of our 5 senses pretty reliably. We see the food, we feel the food around in our mouths, we can smell the food, and obviously we taste the food. But hearing food? Yeah, that isn't something that you normally get. You don't normally get to hear a steak. Or do you? Think about the sounds that make your mouth water. The snap of biting into an apple, the fizzy pour of soda into a glass, the sizzle of a steak on the grill, and of course, the crunch of a chip as you crush it between your teeth. We suddenly activate all 5 senses in the eating experience, which gives us complete, satisfying, and positive feedback. And while that's just my personal hypothesis, I was able to find one study from the University of Oxford looking at the relationship between sound and taste. Dr. Charles Spence had a small sample size of 20 patients bite into 180 Pringles while he adjusted the level of the crunch being played back to them in their headphones. From there, the subjects were asked to rate the freshness of the chips. And although all the chips were exactly the same, the ones that had the crunch played at louder volumes were rated as fresher. And again, this largely makes sense when you think about the food world. Crunchy is often associated with fresh. Crunchy lettuce, snappy apples, grapes that pop in your mouth, it all indicates something at the peak of freshness, something that your body is trained to want to consume, up to a point, because let's just say that there is definitely diminishing returns on that crunchy factor, as I'm very quickly about to find out.
Whew, I need water, desperately. My fingers have literally shriveled up after all the salt that I just consumed.
I thought after being on the internet for 10 years, you could handle the salt.
Yeah, people will tell me I'm salty all the time. Not as salty as these chips. Let me tell you what.
Oh, and I didn't know where to put this into the script as a whole, but apparently Doritos was thinking about making a version of their classic chips with less crunch because they thought it would make it more specifically geared towards women. This is a clip from episode 316 of Freakonomics Radio where they interview the CEO of PepsiCo.
Watch a lot of the young guys eat the chips. They love their Doritos and they lick their fingers with great glee. Women, I think, would love to do the same, but they don't. They don't like to crunch too loudly in public.
So is there like a male and female version of chips that you're playing with or no?
Yes, we are looking at it, and we're getting ready to launch a bunch of them soon. For women, lower crunch, the full taste profile, not have so much of the flavor stick on the fingers. And how can you put it in your purse?
Because women should be seen and not heard crunching their chips or licking their fingers, apparently. That is a big oof there, PepsiCo. Big oof. Maybe there's a reason we haven't seen these products come out. Anyway, back to today's experiment. Our first step in creating the crunchiest chip ever was sampling a bunch of different brands and seeing what traits, if any, were shared among the ones that were the loudest. So we set up the old decibel meter in the kitchen and got to tasting. Oh, do you not normally keep your decibel meter in the kitchen? You don't have a decibel meter at all? I guess I know what I'm getting you for the holidays. At first, things started off fun. I hadn't had chips in a long time, so it was like a reunion with an old forgotten friend.
Does the body good. That's a crunchy chip.
But I quickly came to remember why I'd given them up in the first place.
I like food theory shoots because they get me to not want to eat a particular food ever again.
Yeah.
We have so much of one food in such a short amount of time that I never want to taste it again. If you need me after today's shoot, I'm gonna be on the treadmill for the next week.
Definitely way too much of a good thing. For our test, we gathered potato chips, obviously, but tried to get a sampling of other types of chips as well. Mixed veggie chips, corn, popcorn chips, as well as chips that represented different prep styles, like kettle cooked versus deep fried versus baked. According to Connecticut-based audiologist Nathan Bowman, the average noise level of someone chewing a potato chip should land somewhere between 25 and 35 decibels. But in our tests, we were actually finding the number to be much higher than that.
59.
68.
After averaging 5 good crunches for each of 17 different brands of chips, we had our numbers. Mostly, everything fell in a similar range of 55 to 65 decibels, but there were some very clear trends that stood out amongst the kings of the crunch. First, both of our top spots went to exotic vegetable chips, Simple Truth and Terra Original. Chips that were a mixed bag of taro, sweet potato, batata, and yuca. Yeah, it's pronounced yuca. I looked it up. It came as a surprise to me, too. Yeah, Yosi, our audio guy, called that one out. Thanks for looking out for me, Yosi. Yucca? I always thought it was yucca. You learn something new every day. Anyway, I did a little digging afterward and found a comment thread that discusses how Terra chips are, quote, abnormally hard and crunchy, which means that we were clearly on the right track and that our experiment was lining up with other people's anecdotal evidence about things. The next two spots were potato chips, but specifically kettle-cooked potato chips. This meant that I needed to do some research into kettle chips, since at the time all I knew about them was that they're the type that you buy whenever you want to have cuts in the roof of your mouth. But Harold McGee, author who writes about chemistry of food science and cooking, explains that the kettle method is really just a slower way of frying these things in batches. You see, adding each new batch of potatoes to the fryer drops the temperature of the oil every time. As a result, the potatoes take slightly longer to cook, giving the remaining starch in the potatoes time to absorb moisture and dissolve before the potato finishes frying. This results in a thicker and sturdier chip. So it seemed like we had our two major variables that were boosting overall crunch: exotic root veggies and a kettle cooking process. It's also worth noting, of all the chips that I tested, the potato-based Pringles actually registered the least noisy crunch. Why? Well, Pringles aren't made from sliced potatoes like most other chips. Instead, they're made from dried potato flakes that are then machine molded back into that signature chip shape. As such, while they certainly taste great and are incredibly consistent in color, shape, and flavor, the fact that they've already been chopped up and reformed diminishes the overall crunch. I was also surprised to see how poorly corn tortilla chips performed on the list, riding in the low to mid end of the pack. But after doing a bit of research, I learned that the crunch of a chip is ultimately decided by the moisture content prior to frying. When something gets dropped into the boiling oil, be it a potato slice, pork skin, or a bit of tortilla, the moisture in each individual cell of the chip immediately vaporizes. This is the bubbling that you see happening whenever something gets dropped into a fryer. This is what gives you that hard outer crust that makes frying so delicious and satisfying. You are, in essence, dehydrating the chip. From there, the oil rushes in to fill the space that the water left behind. The more moisture available available prior to the frying, the longer the chip can be in the fryer and the crunchier the final product will be. The problem with many tortilla chips is that they're baked prior to frying, meaning that they're starting from a point of less moisture, as opposed to something like, say, a potato slice or veggie wedge. Veggie wedgie? Veggie wedgie. That's what we're going with. Lastly, we learned from this initial experimentation that 1/8 of an inch thickness seemed to be the ideal size for a chip. Anything thinner seemed to be cooking too quickly and wasn't solid enough to create a good solid snap. So to summarize, we needed a potato or other root vegetable that was cooked kettle style at a medium 1/8 thickness. But which root vegetable? And how best to prepare it? It was time for the next phase of data collection.
Just walking off.
It's like the opening of Iron Chef where he takes like the raw pepper and he goes,
You're gonna wanna spit that out.
First, we wanted to test what prep method would deliver the best results. Online recipes all suggest soaking or rinsing your potatoes out to remove excess starch prior to the frying, but they all suggest different ways of doing that. So, using 3 batches of russet potatoes, we created 3 groups based on the most popular recommendations from those online recipes: soaking the potatoes in water, soaking in a vinegar-water mixture, and parboiling, or partially boiling the potatoes.
they're not crisp yet. They're still flaccid, sad
Stop,
chips.
stop. I know you're gonna eat that. Stop.
Maybe I'm just hungry, Steph. Maybe I am calorically in need right
We
now.
have 10 bags of chips over there.
That's a good point. Thank you. Thank you for calling that out.
After soaking the first 2 groups for 25 minutes and parboiling the third, we threw small batches of potatoes into the fryer at 302 degrees Fahrenheit. We specifically chose to use safflower oil in the fryer because that's what showed up on all the websites for the 4 top crunchy chip competitors from round 1.
Then, freshly cut chips fly directly into a vat of a special bubbling hot oil that's low in saturated fats.
We use a very specific type of safflower oil because of its neutral taste.
But just because I used it didn't mean that I knew what I was doing at the time.
What is a safflower? Have I ever seen a safflower in life?
Yes, past Matt Pat, safflower is indeed a flower. It's actually part of the sunflower family, but it looks more like a pokey thistle. The reason many restaurants and chip manufacturers use safflower oil for their frying is because it has a higher smoke point than other commonly used oils like sunflower and canola. A smoke point is the temperature at which fat begins to smoke, so in general, safflower oil leads to a more stable and safer cooking experience. Much to everyone's surprise, after salting and cooling our 3 batches, it immediately became clear that parboiling delivered the strongest crunch.
They all made a fair showing, honestly, but the winner is, I mean, by several decibels, like seems to be the parboiled.
Yeah, I was gonna say, parboiled seems to be the way to go. It feels sturdier, it feels more crunchy in our mouth, even though every single one was prepared the exact same way. So on average, parboil is yielding the crunchiest of the 3 preparation methods. Now the question is, which vegetable is actually going to yield the crunchiest?
Even Ollie agreed.
Bean, here's one more that we have to test. What do you think? How's that on the crunchy scale?
Super crunch.
Super crunch, nice.
Though I gotta say, if you're ever looking at making salt and vinegar chips, you just let the potatoes soak in a light mix of vinegar before boiling. That's all you need to do, and they wind up delicious. From there, it was time for our final round, testing all the different vegetables that we could find using everything that we had learned thus far. We selected 8 different root vegetables, 2 varieties of potatoes, yams, sweet potatoes, beets, celery root, rutabaga, and turnips. We sliced, we parboiled, we heated up the safflower oil to 300 degrees, and then we threw them all into the fryer batch by batch, kettle style. Once they were out, Stephanie struggled to get into position to try and get footage off the decibel meter.
Oh, I did a Chloe Ting workout yesterday.
With all grace and speed.
I'm really sore, sorry. I didn't realize how serious getting up on the counter was gonna be today.
Man.
Oh my God.
YouTube is a young man's game.
And from there, it was time for the final crunch test.
We're gonna take 3 samples from each type of chip. We're gonna So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take 3 samples from each of our different chip types. From there, Stephanie's gonna be recording the maximum decibels that the meter hears. We'll take the average, and from there, we'll determine what is the ultimate crunchy chip. Ready?
Ready.
Ready?
Rudder.
Great, all right, let's do this. Let's start with the basic guys. We have our golden and our russet. So let's start with some golden potato, first and foremost.
The maximum we're getting is like 63.
There, I will say they feel kind of soggy. That's golden potato, roughly 63. Next, russet potato.
That was 64.
Nice. So potatoes, yeah, an okay showing, not great. I think now let's move on to, what do we got? Okay, sweet potato. These guys look promising. Ooh, these are, look at how beautiful these are. Whoa! It's wild when you look through.
59.
Yam. I am what I am, and that's all that I am.
58.
I was gonna say that one. This one feels soft.
All right, what do we got up next?
Rutabaga.
Rutabaga.
Here we go.
Oh, 64.5.
That was a good one.
That was.
That was a good one. Turn up.
57.8. Next.
We're down to our final two competitors, celery and beet.
By the way, it's celery root, not like the green stuff you get at the store. 62.4. I actually like beet chips, and so I'm kind of rooting for these guys. 57.2.
And the final verdict? Yeah, we made some delicious chips.
That being said, this is a beautiful chip. And they're very tasty. I love these chips, actually. They're delicious.
Except for maybe the celery root.
Oh, it's got a little celery. It's got a little celeriac flavor on the back end there.
It's a little bit like an oily salad. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you know how you like lose calories when you chew celery? This is not that.
But were our decibel readings able to topple the crunch factor of the store-bought brands? No, we were right in the pocket alongside everybody else's decibel readings, but our crunch optimizations weren't quite enough to topple the leader of the Terra chips. Don't get me wrong, our concoctions tasted great and had a solid crunch, but was it the eardrum-splitting supersonic crunch that I was hoping for? No, not quite. I wanted stuff that could be heard across the street, not just down the hall.
So the question of who is our winner so far?
Yeah.
It's a pretty dead even heat, honestly, which makes sense because we prepared them all very similarly.
Yeah.
But actually, I think the original golden potato is a strong contender, and maybe a little on the yam side.
Maybe a little yam. It's interesting. I wonder if thicker might have been slightly better, because right now I feel like I'm able to crunch them really easily. I think if there was a little bit more resistance and a little bit more thickness in the chip, you would get more of that cracking through it sound, as opposed to the like collapsing that seems to be happening.
In the end, our russet potato chips came out on top by a very slim margin, but really, everyone was sitting in that 55 to 60 decibel range. Honestly, I think that we were successful at maxing out the crunch of the chips that we made, but maybe doing another few rounds a bit thicker, or keeping them in a bit longer, or double frying might have made the difference. And there you have it, theorists. Homemade potato chips and all of the knowledge that you need to maximize the crunch. As of right now, the Terra chips are our undisputed crunch champions, but I have a feeling I'll be back. I'm learning, I'm growing, improving. And hey, I highly recommend that you try out this experiment for yourself in your own kitchen. It's not all that difficult to do, and I gotta admit, it makes you feel like a legit chef in the kitchen. I never thought that I would make potato chips for myself, and I gotta say, fresh chips blow away anything that you get at the store, at least the first couple handfuls. Plus, if you have any recommendations for us to try in the next round of experiments to topple the Terra, let me know. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to drink so much water. That was way too much salt and way too much oil for one day. I'm gonna be on the treadmill for quite a while. But hey, we've talked a lot about salty things today, but the level of salt we covered is nothing compared to the saltiness of Team Theorist without their morning coffee. Especially head editor Dan without his morning coffee. Actually, coffees. There's at least 3 of them within the first hour. But thanks to our sponsor for today's episode, Cometeer, my meetings with Dan and the others are decidedly less salty because the coffee is coming fast and directly to their doors. Cometeer is a smarter, faster way of making barista quality coffee because it's brewed using science. And you know that all of us here on the channel are hardcore believers in the power of science to better the ways that we eat and drink stuff. Cometeer embodies this. They find the best regional specialty coffee roasters to partner with. They then grind and brew that coffee to perfection before, and here's where the science comes in, they immediately flash freeze it in order to lock in the freshness and flavor. From there, it's mailed directly to your door, still frozen, where you can then consume it without even having to break out a coffee maker. All you have to do is add 8 ounces of hot water, or better yet, pour it over cold water for an iced coffee, or milk for a latte. It's the high quality taste that you get from your favorite local coffee shops, ready in seconds without you having to put on pants to leave the house. It's less expensive, it's more convenient. I mean, does it get any better? It does. is, because it doesn't need that equipment. There is no mess here, there's no cleanup, there's no need to leave extra coffee makers out on your countertop or have to clean up spilled coffee grounds. All you need is some water and their recyclable pods and you're done. And because they work with regional roasters, you can try all sorts of different flavors. And that's all well and good, but what really matters here is the Dan test. So the question of the day, am I getting salty Dan or happy Dan?
All right, I haven't had my morning coffee, so no pressure, but this better be good. That's good. That's actually... I'm very surprised, because I'm a coffee snob, and I grind my beans every morning and make sure that everything is done right. I even have like the special pour over glass thing. Future Dan, put it up. Yeah, that. And I gotta say, this is really good. Jason, I'm just gonna take this glass and I'm just good, great, cool, good, this is good. This is good, I'm taking it.
Looks like I'm the only salty one today, and that's because I consumed half my body weight in potato chips. For a limited time, Cometeer is offering you Theorists $20 off your first purchase, plus free shipping when you click the link in the top line of the description. That amounts to 10 free cups of coffee and over 30% off. So help support this channel by checking out Cometeer. Infuse yourself with an instant dose of mess-free caffeine delivered straight to your door. I guarantee the people around you will be happy that you did. I, for one, am definitely glad that Dan and Cometeer have been a match made in heaven. And as always, my friends, remember, it's all just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit.